How's your heart today? Tonight is for the people we do not bring up often, not because they mattered less, but because they still matter in a quiet way. Some absences are loud, but many are made of smaller things. A familiar seat at the table, a message we almost send, a habit our hands still remember. Missing someone is not always a crisis. Sometimes it is just a soft ache inside an ordinary day. These letters are for the people who once lived close to our daily lives and still live somewhere inside them. Let's begin. I still expect to hear your key in the door when it rains. You are my older brother, which means I spent half my life acting like I needed less of you than I did. You borrowed my charger, ate the top layer off every baked dish in the fridge, and opened my bedroom door without knocking like privacy was a rumor. If anyone had asked me when I was 16, I would have said I was counting the days until you moved out. Then you did, and the house became too neat. That is still the best way I know to explain it. Nothing dramatic changed. Mom still cooked. Dad still watched the news too loudly. I still left my shoes in the wrong place. Your room still held your old desk, your faded posters, and the drawer full of receipts you swore you would clean out one day. But the house lost its middle noise. You had been the sound between things. The late footsteps in the hall, the fridge opening after midnight, the voice from the kitchen asking what was for dinner even when you could see the answer. When you lived at home, evening always felt in motion. Mom at the stove, Dad pretending he did not want fruit and then eating most of it. You leaning over the pots to inspect dinner like you had official authority. Sometimes you washed dishes if Mom looked tired. Sometimes you stood by the sink eating directly from the pan and insisting you were not hungry enough for a plate. It was repetitive, messy, and so normal that I treated it like furniture. I thought it would always be there. After you moved to another city for work, I got more of what I had once wanted. More quiet, more bathroom time, more shelf space, more peace. And still, somehow, less home. You came back on some weekends at first, your bag in the hall, your towel on the chair. Your habit of opening the fridge and complaining there was nothing to eat while holding 3 things in your hands. Then life widened around you. Work got busy, friends got married, gas got expensive. The visits became shorter, then less predictable. I understood. That is the strange part about quiet missing. It can live right beside understanding. One Sunday evening after you left, I passed your half-open door and saw a glass on the desk with a little water still in it. That tiny, pointless thing undid me. It was proof that you had been there, and proof that you were gone again. I sat on your bed and realized what hurt was not only missing you, it was learning that family can change shape without anyone doing anything wrong. Love has to survive schedules, distance, rent, and adult tiredness. No one explains that part clearly enough. You and I were never easy with emotional language. We hid affection under practical things. If I sounded tired on the phone, you sent money for lunch and wrote, "Buy something decent." If I knew you had a rough week, I mailed the snacks you liked from home and pretended they were just on sale. We have always cared through errands. A few years after you moved out, I visited your apartment for the first time. It was smaller than I expected, cleaner than our family house had ever been, and full of tiny details that made me laugh. Dad's habit of keeping random coins in a jar had somehow survived in you. The same instant noodles you used to eat after late shifts were in your cupboard. There were only 3 bowls in the kitchen, 1 good knife, and a plant that looked healthier than anything I had ever owned. Standing there, I realized I had been missing an old version of you. The loud brother who still belonged to our parents' house. But what I really missed was being close enough to your life to witness the ordinary parts. The groceries on the counter, the laundry waiting in the corner, the person you had quietly become while I was busy becoming someone else too. You asked if I wanted eggs in the noodles, and the question felt so gentle that it almost embarrassed me. I never told you this, but in my early 20s I sometimes called with fake practical questions just to hear your voice sound calm. You had a way of making problems feel livable. Not smaller, just livable. Recently, at a family birthday dinner, Dad asked who wanted the extra umbrella by the door. Without thinking, I almost said your name. It rose to my mouth as if you were in the room. That startled me because it made something clear. Quiet missing is not wishing life would go backward. It is carrying someone's shape into the present without meaning to. So here's the sentence I will probably never say out loud, because we are still siblings and apparently still emotionally awkward. Home sounds a little incomplete without you in it. Some people leave a room, and years later the air still remembers how they used to fill it. The people we miss are not always far away. Sometimes they are simply no longer inside the same daily rhythm. The next letter is for a friendship that did not break. It just stopped happening every day. I still know exactly which joke you would send me when my train is late. That is how I know I miss you. There was no fight between us. No betrayal. No final message either of us could reread and blame. We got jobs in different cities. Our replies got slower. One of us was always tired. Then the other one was. One of us was building a serious relationship, while the other was trying to survive rent increases, a hard boss, and the kind of adult life that leaves your laundry half folded for 3 days. Life filled the small spaces where our friendship used to sit. But before that, you were my first person for almost everything. Not just emergencies. That is what people misunderstand about close friendship. The bond is built through unimportant things. You were the person I sent ugly grocery store signs to. The person I complained to when my upstairs neighbor dragged furniture after midnight. The person who understood why a bad office coffee could ruin my mood for an hour. You knew which family stories made me laugh and which ones made me go quiet. You could hear a pause in my voice and ask the right question without making me feel exposed. We became friends in a boring, perfect way. Two tired coworkers in a break room, taking turns with the microwave and pretending adulthood looked more organized on us than it did. You offered me half an orange because I had forgotten lunch. I made fun of the motivational quote on the wall. You laughed too hard. Then suddenly there were walks after work, voice notes from grocery aisles, and the kind of easy conversation that makes you forget to check the time. I did not realize how important the friendship was while we were inside it. It felt too natural to examine. You were not an event in my life. You were part of the texture of it. The second chair at the cafe. The person who already knew the backstory. The one I never had to warm up for. Then adulthood got specific. Your company moved you. Mine promoted me into a version of myself that was more tired and less available. We still talked, then we still texted. Then we still meant to. I think the first real ache came on a Tuesday afternoon. Something mildly ridiculous happened at work, the kind of thing that once would have become a 3-minute voice note before I even got home. I opened our chat and typed half the story. Then I noticed it had been 11 days since our last message. Not because of anything bad, just 11 days. And suddenly I felt formal, as if I were stepping into a room I used to live in and now had to knock before entering. So I deleted the message. That small hesitation said more than distance ever could. After that, our friendship became kind in the way adult friendships sometimes do. Supportive, sincere, and slightly late. We remembered birthdays. We reacted warmly to each other's updates. If one of us reached out, the other answered with real affection. But the center had shifted. We were no longer woven into each other's daily life. We had become people who still cared, just from the edge. I kept telling myself that was enough, and maybe in some seasons it was. But then ordinary moments would catch me, seeing a book you would have bought immediately, making soup when I was sick, and remembering the time you showed up with lemons, crackers, and absolutely no useful medical advice, then sat on my floor until I laughed. Hearing someone on the train laugh in a way that sounded like you for 1 second. Quiet missing works like that. It appears in flashes. Last year, while clearing storage on my phone, I found one of your old voice notes. You were walking somewhere windy, telling me about a terrible date, then forgetting the story halfway through because you saw a dog in a sweater. I listened to that note twice in my kitchen with groceries still on the counter. What moved me was not what you said. It was the ease of it. The old assumption that I belonged in your day and you belonged in mine. I wanted to write, I miss who we were when reaching for each other required no thought. Instead, I found an old voice note from you today. It made me smile. You replied, that's so sweet, I miss those days too. I stared at that sentence for a long time because it gave shape to something I had been carrying without naming. There is a grief that belongs to changed access. The grief of no longer being someone's first person. The grief of a bond that is still real, but no longer lives in the same place. You are still alive, still kind, still somewhere under a sky I could probably visit if we planned hard enough. That is what makes this kind of missing so private. It feels almost undeserved, as if I have no right to grieve a friendship that technically still exists. But I think many adults know this feeling. We lose the daily version of each other long before we lose the person. If I had been braver, I might have told you that some of my best memories of us are not milestones. They are the pharmacy stop after work, the rainy walk under one bad umbrella, the silent cafe afternoons where no one had to perform closeness because closeness was already there. So here is the truth I never sent. I do not miss you in a dramatic way. I miss you in practical little flashes. In the half second before I remember you are no longer the person I tell first. Some friendships do not end. They simply stop happening every day. And the heart notices later than the calendar. Missing someone quietly does not always mean you want the past back. Sometimes it only means the bond was real enough to leave a pattern behind. The last letter is for someone once loved closely and still remembered through the smallest habits. I still cook enough rice for 2 on nights when I am too tired to think. The strange part is how quickly it happens. I come home from work, set my bag down, rinse the rice, add the water, close the lid. By the time my mind catches up, the habit is already halfway done. I live alone now. I have lived alone for almost a year. I know exactly how much one person needs. But on certain evenings, especially the long ones when work has taken too much out of me, my hands remember us before I do. That is what stayed after you left. Not the dramatic parts. Not your toothbrush or the obvious space in the bed. Those things faded faster than I expected. What remained were the domestic reflexes. Buying 2 yogurts, without thinking. Reaching for your tea on rainy days. Turning my phone to show someone a headline before remembering the kitchen is quiet. You are not the loudest love of my life, and I mean that with respect. We were never chaos. We were built out of smaller things. Grocery lists, shared passwords, weekend errands. One of us washing dishes while the other dried them badly and called it teamwork. The relationship lived in timing. In knowing when the other person needed 10 quiet minutes after getting home. In leaving the hallway light on if someone was coming back late. In texting, do we need milk? And somehow meaning, I'm carrying our life in my mind while I am out in the world. I miss that language more than I miss the relationship itself, and it took me a long time to admit that. People understand heartbreak better when there is a clean story, a betrayal, a slammed door, something you can point to and say, there, that is what broke it. Ours did not end that way. Your father's health changed, and you wanted to move closer to home. My work had only just become stable, and I was terrified of losing the first thing I had built for myself in years. Neither of us was cruel. Neither of us loved carelessly. We were simply standing in a moment where love was asking for a shape our lives could not hold. Even our last month together was gentle, which somehow made it harder. We still folded laundry, still bought oranges, still reminded each other about appointments. We were kind while knowing kindness would not solve the problem. When you moved out, you took the plants, because you had always been better at keeping things alive. I joked that I was inheriting the harder half of adulthood, bills and dust. You laughed, but your face looked tired. Mine probably did too. For a while, whenever people asked how I was, I said, I'm okay. Just adjusting. It sounded more adult than the truth. Adjustment is often just grief in practical clothes. The strangest part came later, after the visible sadness had already passed. I would come home, begin making dinner, and move through the kitchen like a body that still believed in company. Bowl, spoon, second bowl. Rice, enough for 2. Then the tiny private correction. Not anymore. One night I stood over leftover rice and cried, and the tears embarrassed me because they were so ordinary. But that was exactly the point. Love had entered my life through repetition, through care done so often that my hands kept doing it, even after the life around them changed. For a long time, I thought missing you meant I had failed to move on properly. As if every soft moment was proof I was secretly waiting for the ending to reverse. But that was not true. What I missed was being known in unremarkable ways. Someone noticing I always got sleepy after 8. Someone remembering I hated twisted socks inside shoes. Someone who could hear the front door close and tell whether the day had emptied me out. You can miss being known and still accept the ending. I wish more people said that aloud. A few months ago, I found one of our old grocery lists tucked inside a cookbook. Eggs, scallions, soap, ginger, batteries, your coffee, my cereal. At the bottom, in your handwriting, you had added, something sweet if week was bad. I stood in the kitchen reading it longer than I expected, not because it was profound, but because it was us exactly. Tired, practical, and quietly trying to make life softer for each other. I put the list back in the book and returned it to the shelf. That felt right. Memory does not need to become a shrine to remain meaningful. If I could say one thing to you now without reopening anything, it would be thank you for teaching my life a gentler rhythm. Thank you for showing me that care can be ordinary and still change the room. Thank you for the kind of love that made home feel less performative and more lived in. I do not miss you every day. That honesty matters too. Life has continued. I buy one yogurt now. Most nights I measure rice correctly. I have even kept one small plant alive on the window, which would have made you unbearably pleased. But on tired evenings, when I catch myself cooking for 2 again, I no longer scold myself for it. I just let the tenderness be what it is. Because some people leave without becoming mistakes. Some loves end without becoming damage. Some absences do not ask to be fixed. They only ask to be understood. And what I understand now is this. Missing you does not mean I am lost in the past. It means part of my care was shaped in your company. Sometimes love does not stay in our lives, but it stays in our hands. If someone came to mind tonight, maybe that bond is still doing its quiet work inside you. The people we quietly miss are often the ones who taught us how to notice, how to care, how to make a room softer for someone else. You do not have to turn that into regret. Sometimes it can simply become gratitude, or gentleness, or one honest sentence you finally admit to yourself. If these letters kept you company tonight, stay with mine light.